And let's take you to New Orleans now, where the press conference is underway with Mayor Ray Nagin. We'll get the updated information on his city's preparedness for Hurricane Katrina.
The storm is intensifying and is still pointed toward New Orleans, and it's not a meteorologist or an expert that I have talked to that says that this storm will not impact New Orleans in a major way. As a result of that, I am this morning declaring that we will be doing a mandatory evacuation, and I'm going to read the evacuation order to the public. Whereas the National Weather Service has indicated that Hurricane Katrina will likely affect the Louisiana coast with tropical force winds and heavy rainfall by this evening, whereas because of anticipated high lakes and marsh tides due to the tidal surge combined with the possibility of intense thunderstorms, hurricane force winds, and widespread severe flooding, Governor Blanco and I, Mayor C. Ray Nagin, have each declared a state of emergency. Now, therefore, I, as mayor of the city of New Orleans, pursuant to the authority granted by L.A. Rev. Stat. 29-727, do hereby promulgate and issue the following orders, which will be effectively immediately and which will remain in effect until the earlier of 5 days following the date of this issuance or the declaration by the governor that the state of emergency no longer exists. Point 1. A mandatory evacuation order is hereby called for all of the parish of Orleans, with only the following exceptions: essential personnel of the United States of America, state of Louisiana, and city of New Orleans, essential personnel of regulated utilities and mass transportation services, essential personnel of hospitals and their patients, essential personnel of the media, essential personnel of the Orleans Parish Criminal Sheriff's Office and its inmates, and the essential personnel of operating hotels and their patrons. Unless covered by one of the aforementioned exceptions, every person is hereby ordered to immediately evacuate the city of New Orleans, or, if no other alternative is available, to immediately move to one of the facilities within the city that will be designated as a refuge of last resort. Point 2, in order to effectuate the mandatory evacuation at the direction of the mayor, the city, the chief administrative officer, the director of Homeland Security for the city of New Orleans, or any member of the New Orleans Police Department, the city may commandeer any private property, included but not limited to buildings that may be designated as refuge of last resort, and vehicles that may be used to transport people out of the area. The city attorney is directed to file this declaration promptly in the office of the clerk of court and with the Secretary of State, signed by the mayor of the city of New Orleans. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had better news for you, but we are facing a storm that most of us have feared. I do not want to create panic, but I do want the citizens to understand that this is very serious and it's of the highest nature, and that's why we're taking this unprecedented move. The storm is now a Cat 5, a Category 5, as I appreciate it, with sustained winds of 150 miles an hour, with wind gusts of 190 miles per hour. The storm surge most likely will topple our levee system. So we are preparing to deal with that also. So that's why we're ordering a mandatory evacuation. This morning, the Superdome is already open for people with special needs. If you have a medical condition, if you're on dialysis or some other condition, we want you to expeditiously move to the Superdome. At noon today, the Superdome will then be opened up as a refuge of last resort, where we will start to take citizens that cannot evacuate. But let me emphasize, the first choice for every citizen is to figure out a way to leave the city. And I'm asking all the churches We sent out a fax to all the churches that we could this morning, basically alerting them exactly what we're doing and asking them to buddy up, to find members in their congregations, to check on a senior citizen or a citizen who may not have the means and is totally reliant upon public transportation to get around. We will have pickup sites that the Regional Transit Authority will be, at noon, they will start to make runs from the pickup sites to the Superdome to get people into the Superdome as a last resort. Keep in mind, a hurricane, a Cat 5 with high winds, is most likely will knock out all electricity in the city, and therefore the Superdome is not going to be a very comfortable place at some point in time. So we're encouraging everyone to leave. But if you can't leave, here are the 10 sites that starting at noon that you will be able to go to, and there will be RTA buses that will pick you up for free. The first one is E.J. Morris Senior Center, Andrew Pete Sanchez at 1616 Caffin Avenue, and we will give the media a list of this. The next one is France in the 9th Ward at 3811 Galvez Street. The next one is Warren Easton in Mid-City at 3019 Canal Street. The next one is Augustine in Mid-City at 425 South Broad Street. The next one is S. Williams in Uptown at 3127 Martin Luther King Boulevard. The next one is McMain Uptown at 5712 South Claiborne. The next one is Rob Wayne in the CBD at 727 Carondelet Street. The next one is Arthur Mundy Center at 111 Newton Street on the West Bank. The next one is the O. Perry Walker High School at 2832 General Maya. The next one is Aberson in New Orleans East at 5552 Reed Boulevard. And the next one is Sarah T. Reed High School in New Orleans East at 5816 Michoud Boulevard. And the final one is the New Orleans Mission at 1130 Oretha Castle Haley Boulevard. For those of you that want to evacuate and you want to know what shelters are available throughout the state, I would ask you to call the 1-800 number that the state police has set up, which will field any questions that you may have on routes or shelters. And that number is 1-800-469-4828. 1-800-469-4828. The only other thing I will add before I turn it over to the governor is that, take precautions on your home. You may want to fill your your bathtubs up with water just in case when you come back to your homes if there's no running water, so that you have something to come back to. And make sure that you check on your neighbors. It's very important, particularly the senior citizens, that we check on them to make sure that they're okay and that they're not too frightened, and that we assist them before we take off. This is an opportunity in New Orleans for us to come together in a way that we've never come together before. This is a threat that we've never faced before. And if we galvanize and rally around each other, I am sure that we will get through this. God bless us.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I want to reiterate what the mayor has said. This is a very dangerous time. Just before we walked into this room, President Bush called and told me to share with all of you that he is very concerned about the citizens. He is concerned about the impact that this hurricane would have on our people. And he asked me to please ensure that there would be a mandatory evacuation of New Orleans. The leaders at the highest ranks of our nation have recognized the destructive forces and the possible awesome danger that we are in. And I just want to say we need to get as many people out as possible. The shelters will end up probably without electricity or with minimum electricity from generators in the end. There may be intense flooding that will be not in our control, which would be ultimately the most dangerous situation that many of our people could face. Waters could be as high as 15 to 20 feet. That is what the Miami National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center has shared with us. That would probably be ultimately the worst situation. We're hoping that it does not happen that way. We need to pray, of course, very strongly that the hurricane force would diminish. But just remember, even if it diminishes to 1, there were 6 people lost in Florida when it was a Category 1 hurricane. So there's still imminent danger. There seems to be no real relief in sight, and it has been startling to see how accurate the path was predicted and how it is following the predicted path. So we have no reason to believe right now that it will alter its path. Hopefully, it could move just a little bit in one direction or another and not keep New Orleans in its sights. But we don't know that would happen. We would be blessed if that happened. Right now, I think it's important that we all get out as expeditiously as possible. Now, we just flew over here and viewed the situation on the interstates. I-10 in the interior of the city is gridlock. It is total gridlock. I am asking people to look at alternate routes, and I have Colonel Henry Whitehorn here who can talk about it more specifically as well. And again, I have General Landreneau with the National Guard. We are ready, prepared to do all that we can. We have our people deployed. Citizens on the West Bank need to go, if they need to go west, they need to take Highway 90 as opposed to trying to get up on I-10. And we are seeing cars coming in from the West Bank, getting onto I-10, just creating more gridlock. Take the northern routes. People could go east. There's minimal traffic going east right now, and you can go east, north, and then you can go west. But it's a lot easier to drive a little longer where you can drive. Right now, you cannot drive in the city itself up on I-10. We did see, though, that the traffic was moving very well past the urban center area. At Kenner, it blocks up. But after you leave Kenner, if you have enough patience, and you have to be patient, then you will have an easy going for the rest of your trip. But I'll tell you right now, it's creeping and somewhat stopped in the urban center. Use alternate routes, Highway 61, which is Airline Highway, and others. I'd like to invite our Colonel Henry Whitehorn to speak to you about that more specifically. Colonel.
Good morning. As the governor mentioned, we observed the traffic situation here in the city limits of New Orleans. And it's so important that if you have available the evacuation guide, look at those alternate routes. US 61, Airline Highway, virtually no traffic was on it. I-10 East, virtually no traffic on it. US 90, it's heavy, but it's moving. We need to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to look at those alternate routes. If you don't have a map available, you have a computer access, go to www.lsp.org. The map is available on the internet. Please use those alternate routes. We need your help to assist us with getting the folks out of New Orleans. Thank you.
Talk about accidents.
And also minor crashes. If you have a minor crash, we noticed there were several choke points where we had minor crashes and those vehicles were still in the roadway. If the vehicle is movable, please move it off to the shoulder of the road so that the other traffic can flow through. We need your assistance with that. Yes?
Governor, Mayor, are you pretty certain that with the level of traffic and the way it's going through New Orleans that everybody will be able to get out in time and people won't be trapped on the interstate when the weather gets really bad?
Well, the weather, once the weather really starts to get bad, if it approaches 39 miles an hour, you know, we're going to pretty much shut everything down. But you have a window right now until the weather gets really bad, which we're anticipating sometime this afternoon between 5 and 7 p.m. Unfortunately, a lot of people still are waiting, have been waiting, and now when they hear this, I'm sure it's going to spark them to leave. We should be able to get lots of people out. Will traffic slow down? Probably. But the alternative routes, if they use those and everybody does not try go I-10 to Houston, that is the problem. If everybody wants to go in that direction, it's going to create even more gridlock. So
Mayor, you mentioned commandeering certain buildings and vehicles. Have you identified particular buildings that the city might focus on? And how would you get people to those buildings under the circumstances?
Well, you know, it's our backup plan. The reason for that is because we have identified the Superdome as our primary, designated center of last refuge. If the Superdome fills, there are other high-profile buildings that we feel that are available and could provide us with some additional shelter.
Like, such as?
I prefer not to get into that right now.
Will stay based on their inability to be able to leave. How many people do you expect will be, you said based on whether or not the Superdome fills, will be in the city when this one hits?
I have no idea. It's my hope that most people will get out, and if we have the Superdome probably can accommodate 50, 60, 70,000 people.
Mayor, do we have an reminder? This is the city of New Orleans. You said the president asked for mandatory evacuation. What about the surrounding parishes? What about Jefferson Parish? What about the other parishes? Do you expect a mandatory evacuation of all of the parishes across southeast Louisiana because of the president's urging?
Well, some parishes have already declared a mandatory evacuation, particularly those in the low-lying areas. I think that Jefferson Parish has been evacuating, and I would encourage all people in Jefferson Parish to get out of harm's way. This is, of course, mandatory for the city of New Orleans because of the topography, the geography that we deal with here, being below sea level. Jefferson Parish is in imminent danger itself because the storm will be coming right through Jefferson Parish as well. We're talking to the whole area right now and asking people to use good judgment to keep themselves safe, to stay out of harm's way. I'd like to invite General Bennett Landreneau to talk to you about the National Guard and what we're doing there.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Governor. The Governor has directed that all state resources be available to the parishes to support the evacuation and to support any needs that they might have. All of our State Emergency Operations Center is full up, manned by state and federal agencies. The Governor has directed that we mobilize 4,000 Louisiana National Guardsmen to support the parishes. We're available to support Mayor Nagin, Colonel Ebert, and his magnificent team in whatever support they need. We're prepared we are coordinating with FEMA to make federal assets available, and we are ready and able to assist with whatever missions that the city of New Orleans has. Thank you.
Mayor, what should folks bring to these shelters? And the second question, how do you prepare? Because we've never been through this. We've been through these situations, but talking about 20-foot storm surge, topping our levee systems, how does the city begin to prepare for that?
Well, all we can do is basically continue to advise citizens as we get information. This is a once in probably a lifetime event. The city of New Orleans has never seen a hurricane of this strength to hit it almost directly, which is what they're projecting right now. What we're trying to do is keep the public informed, not create panic, but create an atmosphere of seriousness, and also to present options to the public. Right now, we are emphasizing leaving the city. That's what we think is the best thing. If you can't leave the city and you have to come to the Superdome, come with enough food, perishable items, to last for 3 to 5 days. come with blankets, with pillows, no weapons, no alcohol, no drugs. You know, this is like the governor said, yeah, you're going on a camping trip. If you don't know what that's like, just bring enough stuff for you to be able to sleep and be comfortable. It's not going to be the best environment, but at least you will be safe.
What about the parish prisoners, the prisoners in the jail?
Over this decision, hospitals were a big concern. What do you think now? People can stay put? The hospitals are going to decide on their own, or what?
We exempted hospitals because of the concern that if we declare mandatory evacuations for the hospital and someone gets hurt and then the hospital turns them away, that creates a very dangerous situation. So now we've exempted the hospital.
What about the prisoners?
Round numbers on the hundreds of thousands of people who have actually left the area. I mean, I know you're not counting on I-10, but any ballpark figures? Of
I don't have anything. And no traffic counts at this point. Yes.
What about the prisoners in the jail right now? Will they just simply stay in the jail?
Sheriff?
Yeah, we have backup generators to accommodate any power loss. Excuse me, Governor. We have backup generators. We are fully staffed. We're under our emergency operations plan, so we're only. And we've been working with the police department, so we're going to keep our prisoners where they belong.
And Mayor, have you driven around the city? Have you gotten any indication on how many people are leaving?
I have driven around the city. As a matter of fact, this morning I drove out to the airport, and lots of people are leaving, which is a good sign. And I'm just hopeful that we can get as many people out as possible.
They've exempted hotels, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, hotels. We've exempted hotels because what we're finding is that a couple of airlines have canceled some flights, and the tourists that are in town are having a very difficult time finding rental cars. The rental cars are all gone, and they can't find flights, so we've exempted them also.
You have been listening to the mayor of New Orleans, Ray Nagin, as well as Kathleen Blanco, the governor of Louisiana, as they talk about a mandatory evacuation which has been issued for New Orleans. That was something that we were expecting. That's something that the mayor has just announced, saying, I wish I had better news, but we are facing a storm that many fear. There are a lot of preparations in the works to get people out of the area. There are 10 shelters set up, including one in the Superdome, and they're asking people, if you don't have to go to that shelter, please don't. Try to go to a hotel out of the city or to someone's house that you know, but please get out of the city. And this evacuation could be in effect for up to 5 days, so if you do find yourself in a shelter, they're asking you to please bring enough food and supplies to last for that long. Now, another bit of information that was very important that we learned in this news conference is that I-10 is simply gridlocked. There is too much traffic on the roadways there, and there is a fear that some folks may not be able to get out of the area in time because as the weather gets worse, maybe between 5 and 7 p.m. this evening, we heard the mayor say that they could possibly shut down some of these evacuation routes. So we are going to stay on top of all of this for you today and get you an update on Katrina, which is a category